Hey guys, it's Sarah and I just wanted to film a quick intro for this video, but today's video is going to be a fun one. I've never done this before. I am going to be swatching my entire eyeshadow collection by color category. And I think this video is going to be part 1 and it'll be more neutral shadows, and then part 2 will be colorful shadows. I think there are a good handful of people who have done a similar video like this. I know that Too Much Tosh has done it, I think a couple of years ago at this point, but she inspires like half of my videos, so thanks Tosh. But I've seen her do it, and I will also link as many as I can find below. I wanted to do this after I did my last makeup inventory video, just to kind of see how many colors I really do own in each kind of category. So there's going to be categories like taupe, silver, rose gold, and then there will also be like the big, more broad color categories like reds, oranges, yellows, so on and so forth. So I'm sure for each category there will be some that kind of straddle the line between two different categories. Like some of the peaches were close to kind of the yellow category, and there were some yellows that I thought maybe could go in the peach, maybe they could go in the light brown, you know, so it was tricky to categorize them all, but I just did the best I could. I kind of just wanted to do this to take stock of my eyeshadow collection, see where maybe I have gaps in colors or where I have way more shades of a certain color than I feel like I need, so that I can hopefully keep that in mind as I do build up my eyeshadow collection this year, and as I also will probably be decluttering my collection at some point soon. But I think that's enough talking for now. Let's go ahead and get into the swatches. I'm so excited. Alright, so kicking it off with the first category, which is white and cream colored eyeshadows. The majority of these are those matte cream colors that you see in a lot of palettes. That's typically the type of shade I use to highlight my brow bone or just kind of blur everything together. And then I do have a few shimmery cream colors as well. And I did try to swatch these from more yellowy to more pinky, but I mean, they're all very similar. So this first one here is Flyby from the Urban Decay Naked Honey palette. And I actually didn't realize until I swatched that that is more of a satin than a matte. This next one is Good Karma from the Urban Decay Stoned Vibes palette. Fresh from ABH Sultry. This fourth one is Base from the ABH Norvina palette. Then these two are actually the same shade. These are both Tempera. One is from Soft Glam and the other is from Modern Renaissance. Those are the same exact eyeshadow, just from two different palettes. Then we have Cream from e.l.f. New Classics. Fearless from the Balm Nude Dude. Bribe from Urban Decay Naked Reloaded. That one is a little bit more on the pinky side. And then these three here are more shimmery. So we have Blanc from e.l.f. New Classics, the Brow Bone shade from the Wet n Wild Walking on Eggshells palette, and Taj Mahal from the Billie Beauty Eyes of India palette. That is the most reflective of those three shimmers. And those are all of my cream eyeshadows. You can definitely see the subtle differences between them here, but I'm sure on the eyes they all perform pretty much the same. It's kind of shocking how many of these I have in my collection. This next category is light pink shimmers. So all of these have some pink to them. Some are obviously more pink than others. This is the kind of shade that I would normally use as like a lid shade, and I have kind of tried to swatch them from like lighter to deeper. So this first shade here is the shade Icy from the Shared Planet Polar Bear palette. That one is almost more of just like a pearly white color, but it does have just the slightest hint of pink to it. The next one is Pearl from the ABH Sultry palette. Then we have Stardust from the Aether Rose Quartz palette. That is more of a satin than a shimmer. That's the kind of shade I actually really like to use that shade as a brow bone highlight. It gives a very soft glow. Next I have Vermeer from Modern Renaissance, another softer shimmer, almost more satin. Then we have Angel Fire from Urban Decay Naked Reloaded, Dreamer from ABH Norvina, Glamour from e.l.f. New Classics, Heartstone from Aether Rose Quartz. This is the eyelid shade from the Wet n Wild Walking on Eggshells palette. That's a shade that I've always considered to be like my perfect soft lid shade. Next we have Ooh La La from the Profusion Mauves palette. Such a beautiful shimmer formula. Those shimmers in that palette are almost creamy to the touch. They remind me a little bit of the ABH shimmer formula. They almost feel a little bit wet, and look at that beautiful texture to that one. Next we have Rose Quartz from the Aether Rose Quartz palette. This is another one from the Profusion Mauves palette. That's the shade Femme. Again, such a beautiful reflective shadow. Cosmo from the e.l.f. New Classics palette. Next we have the first shade in the e.l.f. Rosewater Quad. And finally, Vibes from Urban Decay Stone Vibes. This one has a lot of different kind of colors to it. It almost looks more purpley in the pan, but I do feel like, for the most part, I would classify it as a light pink shimmer. I do use it in the same way that I would use a lot of these shadows. Alright, so next category is gold, and I do have this divided by more champagne kind of gold colors. These are more intense, like true gold colors. So this first one up here is probably the most rosy of all of these. This is Divine from the Aether Rose Quartz palette. That one almost looks like it could have gone in the light pink section, but I think if it had been in the light pinks, it would have looked a lot more gold next to those. So it's sort of in between. Then we have Barely Baked from Urban Decay's Naked Reloaded palette. These next two are both from the ABH Soft Glam palette. This is Glistening and Fairy. So Fairy is a little bit more yellowy, Glistening is a little bit more rosy. Then we have Primavera from the ABH Modern Renaissance palette. Opal from the Profusion Mauves palette. Blissful from the Ofra Symphony palette, which also is a little bit rosy. And then the final champagne color is Faithful from the Balm Nude Dude. So no shortage of champagne shimmers in my collection. Moving over here to the gold, this one actually looks very bronzy next to these others, but this is Sona from the Billy Beauty Eyes of India palette. That one I probably could have put in my bronze category, but once again, I think if it had been in the bronze category, it would have looked a lot more gold. It's just a pretty stark contrast between all these others. Then this one is Steampunk from ABH Sultry. That is so pretty. It almost has a little bit of green to it. Then we have Golden from Urban Decay Naked Honey. That looks almost like an old gold kind of shade. And finally, Bronze from ABH Soft Glam. It's called bronze, but to me it is more gold. So I put it in the gold category rather than the bronze category. But those are all of my gold shadows. Honestly, I thought I would have more like intense golds. I'm not surprised I have so many champagnes, but I thought there would be more like true golds in my collection, but I guess not. I do have some very, very yellow golds that I'm including in my yellow category, so keep that in mind as well. So next we have browns, and I've divided brown into 3 categories. So this is light browns and beiges. These are the kinds of shades that I'd use as a soft crease shade or like a transition color. Then I have medium browns and dark browns, and then I do also have another category for taupe. So lots of different subsections of this, but starting with these light browns, the first shade I have here, you can barely see it because this one is like the lightest out of all these. This is the shade Blur from the Urban Decay Naked Reloaded palette. That one is just ever so slightly deeper than my skin tone, but it's not quite in the cream category. It's something I'd use as a very soft transition shade or just to blend or blur my shadows together, as the shade would suggest. Then we have the shade Sandstone from the Aether Rose Quartz palette. That's one that looks more beige in the pan, and it actually turns kind of pink on my skin, which I actually really like. This is the most like purpley mauve of all of these. This is Cub from the Shared Planet Polar Bear palette. Love that shade. I love using that kind of shade in my crease. Then we have Wake Up Call. That's a single magnetic shadow from ColourPop. This one is Sweet from Urban Decay Naked Honey. Truffle from e.l.f. New Classics. Uptown from e.l.f. New Classics, so that's more cool. That one's more like pinky warm. This light one here is the transition color from the Wet n Wild Walking on Eggshells palette. I did try to divide these. I did try to do this by cool and warm. This was supposed to be cooler ones, but I'm realizing now some of them do pull more warm on my skin tone, and this second half is more warm orangey ones. So this first orangey looking one is Dawn from the ABH Subculture palette. It's almost looking a little bit peachy here next to these others. Birch from ABH Sultry. That's probably the deepest one of all of these. That's like verging on medium brown, but I still included it in the light brown category. These are the same shade. This is Burnt Orange from Modern Renaissance and Soft Glam. Those two palettes have a few overlapping shades. Then we have Golden Ochre from Modern Renaissance. And finally, Soft Beige from e.l.f. This is their Beautifully Bare Matte Liquid Eyeshadow. And that's actually in my project pan right now. And I use this one as a cream bronzer. So I don't even really use it much as an eyeshadow, but it is technically an eyeshadow. And I'm realizing now that that is very similar to burnt orange from ABH, so that's interesting. Once again, no shortage of light browns and beiges in my collection. I definitely think I have enough of these to last me like 10 years at least, so probably don't need to collect any more of these, at least not in like single shadow form. Next, I have medium browns. All of these are matte, except there's one shimmer. This first one here is Flawless from the Balm Nude Dude. That one is almost taupe, probably could have gone in the taupe category, but felt like it was just brown enough to fit into this category. Then we have Distilled from Urban Decay Naked Reloaded. Once again, also kind of taupey, but still brown enough. And Bucked from Naked Reloaded. Those are the like cooler toned ones here, and then these are the more warm ones. So first warm one here is Boundaries from Urban Decay Naked Reloaded. Then these two are from Urban Decay Naked Honey. Hive, which is very mustardy, yellowy brown, and Drip. And these next few are from ABH palettes. We have Incense from Norvina, Eccentric from Norvina, very orangey, Rustic from Soft Glam, Raw Sienna from Modern Renaissance, Darling from e.l.f. New Classics, and Mojave Mommy from e.l.f. Earth and Ocean. I feel like Mojave Mommy could have probably gone with the cooler toned ones, but I don't know, it got lumped in with the warm tones for some reason. But those are my medium browns. Lots of overlap here. I do feel like a lot of these would have a very similar effect on my eyes. So this is yet another category where I definitely do not really need any more colors like this. Okay, next we have dark brown. This is probably the most boring category to me. And I have so many dark browns. I think just because most palettes have a dark brown. The first, like half, have a little more red to them, and then these are a little more neutral, I guess you could say. But I'm not a color theorist, so bear with me here. This first one is very plummy, actually. This is Sub-Zero from the Shared Planet Polar Bear palette. That one is very, like, almost an eggplant kind of color, but I still counted it in the browns. Then we have Sting from Urban Decay Naked Honey, Fudge from ABH Subculture. Another kind of plummy one, this is Godiva from the Ofra Symphony palette. Muse from e.l.f. New Classics. Funny from the Balm Nude Dude. Burn from Urban Decay Naked Reloaded. I love that shade. All over the lid for like a brown smoky eye. I hardly ever do brown all over the lid, but I love that one for some reason. And this one is Antique Bronze from ABH Modern Renaissance. So these 5 are mattes, these 3 are more shimmery or satin. Now getting into these more neutral dark browns, these have a little less red to them, I guess. This first one is Kobari from the Billie Beauty Eyes of India palette. Then we have Endgame from Urban Decay Naked Reloaded. Honestly, these first 5 here are so similar, it's kind of comical. That's Endgame from Naked Reloaded, Dystopian from ABH Sultry. These are the same shade. These are both Cypress Umber from Soft Glam and Modern Renaissance. Earth from e.l.f. New Classics. This is the most bronzy one here. This is the crease shade from the Wet n Wild Walking on Eggshells palette. And this last one here is Fine from the Balm Nude Dude. That is like the most underwhelming shade to me. As I was swatching it, I was just like, ugh, like what is that? You know, it doesn't even look like anything. Alright, a much smaller category, this is gray, and this is actually one of my favorite categories. I love gray eyeshadow. It's not often that you do see a gray, especially a matte gray, in an eyeshadow palette. So top row is mattes, bottom 2 are shimmers. So this first one is the shade Aphrodite from the Aether Rose Quartz palette. I love that one because it has almost this purpley rosy undertone to it that makes it, I feel like, so much easier to pull off than a lot of grays. I feel like a lot of grays can kind of make your eyes look sunken in and just make you look like you have a black eye, and I think that's probably why grays are not very popular, but that one, at least on my skin tone, is so just easy to work with, and I love that one. This one is Chilly from the Shared Planet Polar Bear palette, Grounding from the Aether Rose Quartz palette, similar to Chilly, but a little bit bluer, and then this one is Slate from the ABH Sultry palette. And then these bottom 2 are my shimmery grays. This is Arctic from the Shared Planet Polar Bear palette, beautiful color. And then this is Astarte from the Aether Rose Quartz palette. I did look up that pronunciation. It still sounds wrong, but that's what we're going with. That's almost taupe, but I still included it in the grays because it definitely has more gray to it than other taupes in my collection. Alright, next for another of my favorite categories, this is my silvers, and it's so interesting to see these all next to each other because they all look like completely different colors, even though I would classify all of them as silvers, and they look way more silver when they're kind of on their own in their own respective palettes. But this first one is actually a single from ColourPop. This is the bluest one of all. This is Beam Me Up. And that one I almost put in the blues, but it's definitely just, to me, it's like a silver with a blue undertone. This is probably the truest silver. This is Liberty from ColourPop. That's one of their Super Shock shadows. Tundra from e.l.f. Earth and Ocean. This one is very flaky, but it just packs such a punch. It's a beautiful, almost like, I think it's almost a pressed glitter, but it's not a, it's like more of a creamy pressed glitter. It's not like the ColourPop pressed glitters, if that makes sense. This one is looking very like purpley here. This is Cyborg from the ABH Sultry palette. So pretty. I love the dimension that that one has. This one is Crystalline from the Aether Rose Quartz palette. Has a little bit more of a taupey brownish undertone. And finally, this is a very greenish silver. This is Platinum from the e.l.f. New Classics palette. I've always been a little disappointed in this one just because I love silver so much and I feel like it's hard to find a good silver in a lot of palettes, and even though it's called Platinum, it's very just kind of like olivey, kind of dull, and you know, it's still a pretty shade, but it's just not quite what I was hoping for from that shade. But those are my silvers. Even though silver is one of my favorite shadows, it's also one of my smallest categories. Next we have a category that I feel like it's almost like a catch-all category for shades that are difficult to pinpoint otherwise, but this is what I'm calling taupes. You can see that this ranges from like rosy taupes to more olivey taupes to bronzy taupes. So some of these I feel like could have gone maybe into the brown category or even the green category, the purple category, but we're calling them taupe, even though I'm sure some of these are not correctly categorized as taupe. So this first one here is Snake Eyes from ColourPop. Almost a little bit rose gold, but it's also got some brown and some grayish to it. And next we have Bronze Moonstone from Terre Mere. That is a single loose shadow that I have. I actually didn't realize how similar that was to Snake Eyes. It's a little different, a little bit like dustier and purplier, but they're super similar. This is Dazzling from ABH Norvina. That is such a dimensional shade to me that I feel like it could have gone into like 5 different categories. It's got some bronze, some rose gold, some brown, but that's why it's in the taupe, because I couldn't really pick a different category for it. These two are from the Shared Planet Polar Bear palette. We have Prism and Frosted. Prism is a little bit more mauve-y, Frosted is a little more grayish purpley. This is Dreamweaver from Urban Decay Naked Reloaded. It's kind of like a brown base with a grayish silver shimmer to it. These three are all kind of olivey taupes from e.l.f. palettes. This is Rock Bottom from e.l.f. Earth and Ocean. Then we have Opulent from e.l.f. New Classics. Fuji Feels from e.l.f. Earth and Ocean. That is so pretty and rich. These are 3 of my kind of cool matte taupes, all from ABH palettes. We have Twig from ABH Sultry, Volatile from ABH Norvina, and Mercury from ABH Subculture. A few kind of warmer taupes. This is Firm from the Balm Nude Dude. These 3 are all from ABH Sultry. We have Ember, Cinder, and Teak. And finally, Warm Taupe from ABH Modern Renaissance. I'm feeling like these 2 probably could have gone in like the bronze category, but here we are. So those are my taupes. So next we have bronzes and coppers. Once again, quite a range here. Some of these are looking a lot more rose gold next to the others. This first one is Amber from Urban Decay Naked Honey. That is the most like yellowy amber color of all of these bronzes. Then we have Adorn from the ABH Subculture palette. Silk by Natasha Denona. I have this in a single that I got as like a Sephora Point perk, but I believe this is from the bronze palette, and that is a really pretty shade. Very like creamy to the touch. This is HBIC from Urban Decay Naked Honey. Similar to the previous 2. This is Fit from the Balm Nude Dude. That one is almost rose gold, but I included it in the bronze category. This is Summer from ABH Norvina, probably the least red toned of all of these. And finally, Rose Gold from the e.l.f. New Classics palette. I do have a separate category for rose golds, but to me this is a lot more coppery bronze than rose gold. So those are all my bronzes. I only have 7. I mean, that's plenty of bronzes. And I like that I have some more yellowy ones, some more orangey ones, some more rosy ones, so I have a good mix of bronzes here. Alright, so next we have Rose Gold. This is another one of my favorite categories. This first one is actually, to me, the least rose gold of all of the rose golds, but the name of the shade is literally rose gold, so I decided to include it in this category because I didn't really know where else to put it. But this is Rose Gold from the ABH Norvina palette. This one is more like purpley mauve to me, but it does have a rose gold reflect to it, so I figured it would count in this category. Next, I have Rose Pink from ABH Soft Glam. Such a pretty color. That's just a cute color. Like, what an adorable shade. Next, we have Rose Quartz from ABH Sultry. This is Come and Get It from ColourPop. This one has more of a cool base to it, whereas I feel like usually rose golds have a warmer base, but it does have a distinct rose shift to it, so I do count that as a rose gold. This is Reawakening from the Aether Rose Quartz palette. I think that is such a pretty shade. It's a beautiful topper shade. I just wish it had a little more color payoff, but some of the shimmers in the Aether Rose Quartz palette are just a little sheer, but I mean, still, look at that. It is kind of a duochrome shadow, and I just think it's really pretty. This next one is Tiger's Eye from Urban Decay Stoned Vibes. One time recently, I actually used Tiger's Eye on my lid, and then I topped it with Reawakening from Aether Rose Quartz, and that was a dreamy combo. So pretty together, and that really brought out the beauty of Reawakening there. Next, I have Grandstand from Makeupgeek. I almost put that in the bronze category, but I'm glad that I put it in the rose gold category because I do think it is a lot more rose gold than anything. And then finally, Reputation from Urban Decay Naked Reloaded. This one is also a little bit on the bronzy side, but I still feel like it ends up looking more rose gold on the eyes. And those are all of my rose gold shadows. This is another category very near and dear to my heart. These are Dusty Mauves, or Dusty Rose shades. All of them are matte. There's some shimmer left over on my arm from other swatches, but these are all pretty much matte, actually except one that does have a little bit of glitter to it, but even though I probably could have included many of these in like the purple or the pink category, I wanted to include these in their own category because to me this is a very important type of shade. I love using a dusty rose in my crease. I just think it is one of the most flattering matte crease colors, and that's why I gave them a category of their own. So this first one we have here, I did try to start with like the cooler ones and then end with the slightly pinker ones, but they're all kind of mixed together. So this is Buon Fresco from the ABH Modern Renaissance palette, a classic. This is Ballad from the Profusion Mauves palette. This is the light matte shade from the e.l.f. Rosewater quad. That's shade number 2 from that quad. I love that shade. It's definitely the lightest one here. I love it for just a very soft crease shade. This is Scorpio from the Aether Rose Quartz palette. Also adore that shade. Feisty from the Balm Nude Dude. That's a lighter one as well. Dusty Rose from ABH Soft Glam. Lovesick from Profusion Mauves. That one is the one that is matte, but it has a little bit of like glitter flecks in it. They don't really show up that much on the eye, so I don't even know why they really included that in there, but that's that one. Then we have Charmer from e.l.f. New Classics and Bill from ColourPop, and that is one of their Super Shock shadows. I love that shade. You know, one observation I'm having here as we go through these swatches is that there's a lot of overlap between e.l.f. New Classics and other shades in my collection. Almost every shade from e.l.f. New Classics that we've swatched so far has had another similar shade in my collection. A lot of them overlap with shades in my ABH palettes. Like for example, this shade Charmer, which is honestly one of the main reasons I bought New Classics, is because it had a matte mauve that I was drawn to. That overlaps a lot with Scorpio here from Aether and Dusty Rose from Soft Glam. And honestly, I do prefer both of those palettes over New Classics. Not that there's anything wrong with the formula of the New Classics, but I just feel like the formula of ABH and the mattes in Aether, I just enjoy them more for whatever reason. Maybe it's just because they're more expensive. I just feel like I have more of a luxury experience with those, but I'm kind of noticing that maybe e.l.f. New Classics is gonna be on my radar to declutter when I do have an eyeshadow palette declutter coming up in the next couple months on my channel, and that might be one that I think about decluttering because I'm just realizing most of the shades in there are a duplicate for another shade in my collection. And also that packaging broke recently, which is just kind of another strike against it. So anyway, just an observation there. Has anybody else noticed that as I've been going through these swatches? All right, so here we have black eyeshadow. I have 8 of these. 5 of them are matte, 1 is satin, and the other 2 do have some shimmer to them. It might look like there's some shimmer over here once again, but that's because I just couldn't get it off from previous swatches. But I would love to know, because I feel like everybody's always looking for like the best, most pigmented, opaque black shadow. Which of these, like number them 1 to 8, looks like the best to you, and can you guess which brand and palette it's from? And leave a comment below. I think that'd be really interesting to hear what you think before I tell you what they are. I already think I have my opinion of which one is the best. This first one is the shade Black Ice from the Shared Planet Polar Bear palette. That one definitely is a little bit more sheer, at least in the swatch, than the others. Keep in mind though, the swatch doesn't always tell the whole story, but it definitely looks unimpressive compared to some of these others. This is Kajal from the Billie Beauty Eyes of India palette. That one is definitely a contender for number 1, and I will go ahead and say I love this one as a liner. I feel like it just is so smooth and just precise to use as like a winged liner. Beautiful black. These 2 are supposedly the same shade, both from ABH palettes. These are both Noir. This one is from Sultry, this one is from Soft Glam. However, looking at them next to each other, they actually don't look quite the same. The Sultry one looks a little bit redder, whereas the Soft Glam one looks like it has a little bit of a like greenish undertone to it. So I don't know if they are actually different, or maybe it's just because my Soft Glam palette is older, but either way, those also both swatched very smoothly and very pigmented, and I would say those are some of the best matte black shades to work with. And then the final matte one is Noir from the e.l.f. New Classics palette. Also a little unimpressive compared to these 3 middle ones here. So those are my matte blacks. This is my one satin black. This is Trenches from the e.l.f. Earth and Ocean palette. I actually really like this one. Very pigmented, very smooth. Then these 2, I don't love these just because they do have shimmer. I think I would just prefer matte or honestly satin, but this one here is Fierce from the Balm. That one has like a little bit of a silvery shimmer to it, and then this is Downtown from e.l.f. New Classics, which is a matte that has some little flecks of glitter to it. So those are all my blacks, and it's honestly a tie between the Billie Beauty one and the ABH one. I feel like those are both really, really nice blacks. And that is the final neutral color category. So I'm gonna go ahead and end this video here, and then part 2 will be colors, which I think is gonna be a lot of fun. I feel like I've just been in my happy place the entire time making this video, so I hope you guys enjoyed looking at some pretty eyeshadows, and if you did enjoy it, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I'd love to see you again very soon, and hopefully I will talk to you in my next video. Bye.